Hi,
Right.
everybody. Welcome back to VISTV. I'm Joan Viscardi, and I'm here today and very excited to introduce Mario Pecoraro, CEO and founder of Alliance Risk Group. Welcome, Mario.
Good morning, Joan. Welcome, and thank you so much for having me today.
Pleasure, pleasure. I know schedules don't always fit, so I really appreciate when my guests take the time to sit down with me and an audience who's really interested in hearing what you have to say today about topics in leadership, technology, of course, COVID. But before we
Sure.
start, tell us a little bit about Alliance Risk Group, what your services are, and then let's segue into you leading that company.
Sure. Thank you so much, Joan, and certainly a pleasure to be here today. So Alliance Risk Group is a company that I founded in 2005, and I come from a history. My dad was an old school private investigator, so I grew up in a family-owned business doing investigations. So to say that investigations and risk management are in my blood, it's literally it's actually probably a little genetics there. If we test some genetic lines, it's probably somewhere along the lines. But I developed a strong passion for the investigative industry at a pretty young age, and then working with my dad in a family business, I got to learn the ins and outs of investigations. And I took that passion and launched Alliance Risk Group in 2005. And really, our what we do is we help organizations reduce risk and inspire confidence. And we have a couple different units at Alliance. One that focuses exclusively on the insurance industry, particularly with the self-insured markets, the large self-insured employers, carriers, TPAs, and we help them with all forms of insurance fraud. So the common surveillance, various types of fraud investigations, medical canvassing, any type of workers' comp and liability insurance fraud. We do that quite a bit with a focus on the East Coast, licensed in multiple states. And then we have a couple other divisions as well. Another division does nothing but pre-employment screening and background investigations. We work with employers, human resource professionals, talent acquisition professionals throughout the country, making better hires. And so we perform all forms of criminal background investigation, social media screening, and a variety of other background investigations. So we believe if we can help an organization do a better job of bringing talent in, we hope that there's less of a chance of fraud and risk on the way out. And we have a couple other divisions that also relate to legal support and claims adjusting. So it's been an exciting journey for me, and I'm excited at where we've been, where we are, and where we're going as an organization.
Oh, that's great. So it's interesting to use the word talent and talent acquisition. So talk to me a little bit about your own talent, not yourself, but your teams. How do you take a team, you hire those individuals, you find their talents, and then you work with them consistently to create a culture that I'm sure Alliance Risk Group has their own culture of motivation, of work, learning, education. Speak to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's an area, Joan, that I've developed a strong passion about through the years as I've built Alliance and the organization. And so for me, it's all about the people. It's all about bringing the right people into the organization, attracting the right people. But it all starts with leadership. It starts at the top, I believe. So it starts with me as the founder, but also it's the journey is no longer about me. It's about the people in the organization. So for us, a few things jump out as far as talent. First, I think it's important that an organization establishes the culture, the behaviors, the lifeline, the bloodline of what's acceptable and what's not in an organization. So we established a very strong culture early on at Alliance. One of really a number of things, including complete transparency. So we're a culture of transparency. We're a culture of established core values. I believe that an organization that establishes core values, which are what an organization essentially lives and dies by, and those are fundamental things within an organization. So for instance, at Alliance, our core values are integrity first. That's our first core value. Our second core value is being successfully engaged in what you're doing. The third is having a passion for excellence in what you're doing. And the last, which could also be the first, is positive attitude. We believe having a great attitude is critical. So I believe establishing the culture in the organization starts with determining, what what are the behaviors, what are the values that you believe in, and what does your team believe in? And then you hire around those core values. And unfortunately, the word firing is pretty strong, but you free up the future of those that are not in alignment with those core values. And so for me, it's about determining, who exhibits those core values, assuming that that's what we all agree upon as an organization to be our core values. And then once you bring the leadership in and the team in, you engage them, you motivate them, you inspire them, you share the vision with them. But most importantly is you get out of their way. You don't micromanage them. You hold them accountable, but at the same time, they tell you hire people that are smarter than you are, that are more able to do things than you are, and focus on what you're good at and let them focus on what they're good at. And that's what I believe through the years helps make any organization a stronger and better one. Of course, I said all that in a matter of a couple of minutes, but it's not as easy as
No, it's
as
a
I just said.
lifetime.
It's a
You've
lifetime
been,
for sure.
you've been leading a company for 16 years. I've been leading a company for this company equal to that amount of time, but I've been a leader for over 30 something years.
Sure.
And I think a couple of the things that you touched on, which I have seen as a commonality in almost every leader that I've interviewed, whether in or out of the insurance industry, is integrity and trust. And I think it's interesting that you provide a service where you are helping other companies mitigate risk in their employees. And so how do you work with the leaders in those companies? Because are you looking to just advise them, consult with them on bringing in these individuals? Or is a large part of it, you're really knowing what a leader wants, knowing what the company's mission and value is?
Right. That's a great question. So on the talent acquisition end, we're working with generally VPs of HR, VPs of talent acquisition, and they're generally dealing with, essentially filling key roles in the organization. So what we're doing is we're working with them more on the strictly the background aspect, not so much on the leadership side, unless we're specifically focused on a key position where they're looking at more than just their critical elements, such as their criminal background, their educational background, getting to more of a deeper dive into their ability to perform as a leader and what their history has been as a leader. The higher level folks in organizations tend to be referred into organizations, and that sometimes can be good or bad depending on where the organization is going. So my passion for leadership and growth is while it is in alignment with the services that we offer, a lot of times I'm swayed around, yes, we provide a service, but I'm more passionate about getting folks on the right bus to share the common vision. So I wish I could sell more of that, but that's kind of a harder thing to sell as much as my services are.
Well, definitely. It's very personal and subjective. You've
Absolutely.
talked about something that is totally off the topic of what I thought I'd talk about today, but I think our audience might find it really interesting. Social media, investigating social media.
Sure.
Did that change during the pandemic? Does it change jurisdictionally how you utilize social media? Is there anything that you'd like to talk about regarding social media? I find it very interesting when I
Sure.
have my HR team look to hire someone. It is something we look into. But
Sure.
anything
Sure.
you want to talk about there?
Yeah, that's evolved quite a bit through the years. So the traditional, when you hear the term social media screening, you think of the traditional person that's sitting out at the computer terminal, usually the nosy manager, the nosy HR person that decides to Facebook search or Google search somebody before they bring them into the organization, which I'm sure never happens in the public or private sector, but let's just say it were to happen, being facetious, of course. There's some laws around what's acceptable and what's not. So if we put on our HR hats for a second when it comes to pre-employment screening, there are certain steps that have to be followed in order to do a social media background check. And it's more than just allowing you, the hiring manager, to do it. So first of all, a social media investigation, even a simple Google or Facebook search of someone's social media account, that falls under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which governs background screening. And in essence, what it means is that if an employer is considering any type of third-party information, such as a social media piece or criminal background check or education or any type of third-party information, the applicant is entitled to review the contents and potentially refute the contents of that report, regardless of whether or not a hiring decision is made, right? So now you're gathering data about somebody. So then the next question becomes, well, who's gathering the data? How is it being gathered? And how is it being vetted to make sure it's accurate, right? So there's some technology that's been developed that will look at properly gathering the applicant's information, but most importantly, looking at some key areas that an employer would be concerned about. So we're focusing on an applicant. We're looking at really things that an employer can use in an adverse hiring decision. And now we're not putting on our claims hat. Now this is strictly the pre-employment hat. But on the pre-employment hat, we're looking at things such as any type of racist behavior or activity. We're looking at any sexually explicit materials. We're looking at any illegal activity that might be conducted by the person, any threats or acts of violence. So those are the main areas that we're looking at. And we're redacting protected class information from that report. So if we run a name, let's just say we run Mario Pecoraro, we run the social media, a potential adverse record comes back and hits one of those 4 areas, the employer is entitled to receive a copy of the report as well as the screenshot of which area is developed, and the applicant then has a right to see that report and refute the contents of the report. So that's on the pre-employment side. So it's evolved quite a bit. A lot of employers are still doing their own social media screening, thinking it's fine. There is, background screening is governed by the Fair Credit Reporting Act, much like you would pull your credit report. We are governed by the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and that an applicant has the right to refute and challenge the contents of that report. And as a matter of fact, in New York City, that's been escalated even more now, where there's the Fair Chance Act, which essentially prohibits an employer from even looking at a criminal record until they've exhausted all other aspects of the background, because they don't want them to discriminate. So that's a whole topic that I could spend hours on. But in essence, social media is used on a regular basis on the pre-employment side. On the claim side, none of those rules apply, right? So you can go in and do a Facebook search of a claimant, gather intelligence. Claimants are still, fortunately for our industry, not as astute as they should be or could be, especially when they're tagged in photos. They're listed with family members. So we use that on a regular basis on the claim side. But people have more time, right? So if they're not traveling as much and they're not doing as much, they're spending more time on social media, which tends to be helpful on the investigative end when we're looking to gather intelligence.
I think that's so helpful. I really do. I wasn't anticipating that discussion, but I think,
Absolutely.
your advice there and opinion will be very valued by many of the audience members for sure. So let's segue that into technology and jurisdiction. You're in numerous jurisdictions on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
We focus on the East Coast. We have a lot of national presence, but we're more experts in New York. I dare say that's potential in your end too. How did COVID impact that at all, particularly in the SIU area?
So it did a little bit when it comes to how the work is done. It's also impacted a little bit on what the claimants are doing. So when it comes to the SIU area, when COVID hit and claimants when COVID first hit, the world shut down as we all know it, right? So everyone thought people are not going to be active, they're going to stay home, and that was for a majority of cases. That was the case initially. That was the first onset. But as time went on, as claimants got out more, there was a pause for about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, where not much happened. But then in the SIU world, what we found was that there was new ways of fraud being perpetrated on a regular basis, right? So now it became obviously fraud along the lines of on the government side with not going back to work, but also even on the business side, some businesses that are perpetrating fraud with with the federal government funds and things like that. So that really opened up a whole new area for potential fraudulent behavior by individuals and by businesses. And so I think it removed the geographic boundaries. So I think where we were just limited to just the states that we operate in, now it was pretty common for a claimant to move across country, or to not even tell anyone that they've moved, but to just pick up and move and leave with family, or perhaps just go under the radar using a different identity. So it definitely changed how investigations were done, and even the contact side, right? So even now to this day, there's new protocols in place when we're having direct contact with a claimant or their counsel around not only if they're attorney rep, but also just direct contact, right? Because people are afraid to have contact. So
Oh,
protocols are
for sure.
established
Yeah.
with investigators, with folks that we're interviewing around best practices to ensure that we're being safe as well. So a lot definitely changed in that regard to be safe, but unfortunately that opened up more opportunity for fraud in other areas where employers are now even more concerned of how to address that.
Yeah, yeah. How is technology being impacted? Have you seen an evolution,
Absolutely.
particularly in SIU? Would you like to talk a little bit about the evolution of technology on that front and where you think it's going?
Yeah, so I think technology has changed the way business is done. I think when it comes to investigations and just in general, organizations have changed how they're operating, right? So when it comes to being on the SIU world, where folks were more operating, committing fraud and operating from an office perspective, now they're looking at things more of on a remote perspective. So companies are transforming. We've transformed as an organization, as have several organizations around, once again, removing those geographic boundaries, where technology has evolved to a point where using technology no longer requires you to physically be in an office, no longer requires you to have any aspect of the old school ways of thinking to apply when it comes to fraud.
Right.
So that's really opened my
We
eyes.
truly are socially distanced. That's for sure.
We completely are. We definitely completely are.
Socially distanced. So when you put it all together, what I'm hearing from you, and really has been, I'm always taken aback by what I learn when I'm interviewing somebody,
Sure.
is the importance of, one, not just being a leader, but being a trusted leader, being aware of not just what a client wants, what an individual within your own team needs, how do you move that person forward? How do you then use the technology, the rules and regulations of all the areas and jurisdictions you're in, and at the end of the day, provide a good, high quality product that really, you back as a leader. And I really hear in you, not just the confidence, but the pride in what you're doing and what you have been doing.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm very, very proud of the team and what we've accomplished together. And I think any leader, to be an effective leader, has to be a constant learner, has to be one that's willing to listen, willing to open their eyes. When the world changed for everyone and in March of 2020, February 2020 into March, I was of the old school mentality where, we had to operate under, I had just invested in an office building, and we had, most folks physically in an office. And when our COO, and I met and we were meeting on a regular basis, first of all, we were completely transparent with the entire organization from day one. And I've to this day, I still receive, messages and notes from my team just thanking us for that transparency of what we were going through as an organization.
Oh, yeah.
And over time, we realized we've evolved immensely to really convert to a remote first company, because we've hired so many more people since that time that are now geographically dispersed. We've revamped our entire business model utilizing technology. And if anything, we've seen an increase in productivity, an increase in employee morale, and our retention continues to be great, in the sense that, we took our time to make sure that this is what the employees wanted. And we realized that, there was collaboration we still do, and we've had to make sure we do. So we still find ways to do that. But most importantly, we listen to our people, we listen to our clients, and we made sure at the end of the day, the final product is not compromised, the culture is not compromised, and the vision is not compromised. And once we kind of align those things, it's been a fun journey and continues to be a fun journey to do that.
We started doing this right around that time, and it is definitely a core characteristic that I hear in everybody. That
Sure.
is listening, but I think also leading by example and practicing effectively what you want to see mirrored back to you is so important. And I don't think it's limited to any one industry. I think if service industries were all like that,
Right.
less conflict,
Yeah.
complaints, and
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
move
One
forward.
thing I wanted to also share, which I think has been helpful in our organization as we've developed, more technology, is we have weekly huddles every Monday. So we have a company-wide huddle every Monday. That's about 17 minutes in length, and we basically follow some cadences around sharing what's happening in the organization. So we've always done weekly huddles every Monday. They used to be in person, and as we developed and we've gone remote, now we do them via technology. And so every department has updates what's going on. We share good news, we share core values, and then each department has daily huddles every day on video, and they talk about their priorities each day, and everyone's in alignment with what the vision of the organization is. And I find that people have told me, that's really helpful, because when you can't be next to someone in an office, it's like being right next to them. So you hear what's going on, and it's 15, 17 minutes a time times whatever. We're up to north of 40 employees now. But over time, people get a lot of value out of that, and they look forward to that, because now they can actually understand what's going on and still be part of it.
Yeah, I think, Mario, that's key. As a nurse, I was trained initially as a nurse, and still work as a nurse in my company, and a chief nurse of the nurses that work within the company. It's so important, mental health. And what you're really talking about is the mental health and well-being of your firm. And that requires eye-to-eye contact. It's
Sure.
not just listening. What you're really doing is inspiring others by them seeing each other, by hearing and listening to each other. And I think that's so important. I think if we're going to move forward in this new endemic situation that we're in, that's going to have to become part of the daily practice of companies, especially remote companies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, you've been great. You've been very inspiring. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
Which, as you say, as a leader is so important, not just to listen, but to learn. And I learn from everyone that comes on VISTV, and it's really been a pleasure to learn from you. Be inspired. I wish Alliance Risk a lot of success. And like I say to everyone, I can't wait to meet you in person.
Likewise, it's been a real pleasure. Has been mine, and I look forward to meeting you in person as well. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Likewise. Well, best of luck to you.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot.
Thank you so
Mario.
much. Bye bye now.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too now. Bye bye.